Hey guys, today we'll talk about the top 3 winning Space Marine lists from different countries and tournaments. So if you want to know what works now in the competitive meta and what you could use to enhance your list, this video is for you. So without further ado, let's dive right in. We'll be taking a look at my perception of how I think the list is meant to be operated and what we can learn from the author, which obviously that worked for them, so it might work for us. To qualify, the lists will be taken from grand tournaments and they need to be either first, second, or third place, and we're going to be ranking them by the number of players. So the first place in the most populous, the biggest tournament is obviously going to be in the first place, and going down smaller tournaments and lower place spots. And big thanks to guys from Gunhammer for collating all the data so that we can now enjoy all that in nice format. So number 3, we have the Stormlance Space Wolves list by Dan Bruce, who took the second place at a 70-player grand tournament, 6th-round grand tournament in Canada on March 25th. And what we have here is essentially our good old Wolf Jail roster, but with a special twist, I could say. Usually those rosters are built with as many wolf bodies as possible, that is 18 Thunderwolf Cavalry and a bunch of Fenrisian Wolves with the Cyber Wolves to keep those at bay, in order to make sure that your opponent is locked in an eternal struggle with a constantly falling back and charging units that are very hard to pin down, but they pin down everything very efficiently. And why this is not a traditional Space Wolves Stormlance Wolf Jail is because we only, it's gonna sound funny, but it's only 16 wolves on guys on Thunderwolves in total. It's 4 characters and 12 of the normal Marines. So let's run through this quickly. We have Logan Grimnar on foot, not in his wonderful sleigh. We have Ragnar Blackmane. We have Lieutenant with Combi Weapon, which I'm very happy to see here is an amazing model, as we discussed multiple times on the channel. We have Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf with a Storm Shield and the Power Fist. Another one just like that. We have a Wolf Lord on Thunderwolf, again with the same loadout, Shield and Fist. The Shield in this case gives the Wolf Lord an extra wound, so they become, I think, 7 wounds in total. 2x5 squads of Jump Pack Intercessors with the Power Fist on the Sergeant, obviously the classic combination, and a Plasma Pistol on the Sergeant, another Plasma Pistol in the squad. We have 6 Blade Guard Veterans. As you can see, the price here is new already, as it's a very, very recent tournament. 5 Scouts, which in the roster that I've seen, at least for some reason, the Scouts were just empty bare bones with no extra weapons like the missile launcher or the sniper rifle. I'm pretty sure that's just a typo, and probably most likely was the traditional loadout of the missile launcher or maybe a heavy bolter and the sniper rifle, as well as a chainsword on the Sergeant. They have the chainsword on the Sergeant, but now no other upgrades on the other guys. Of course, 6 Thunderwolf Cavalry plus 6 Thunderwolf Cavalry with the Storm Shields and the heirloom weapons. Vindicators, which is very unsurprising to see, one of the best tanks in the game, definitely one of the best tanks in the Space Marine Codex, and Impulsor. What I think is interesting is that we're running Logan Grimnar with no Terminators, so I'm guessing that he's not joining anyone and he's just running on foot, or perhaps he's been deep struck rapid ingress as a deep strike threat. That's very interesting. His ability is to give the full army essentially once per game Oath of Moment and reroll charges, so if you time it correctly, you can really buff up your list quite a bit, because obviously only one thing can be Oath of Moment, so that's the one way to get multiple charges off with rerolls on the charge and rerolls for the hit roll. Plus, you're not paying too many points for Logan, and he is a real bit stick with 6 attacks at strength 8, AP 2, damage 3 with his Axe of Mordecai, and he can also have a bunch of attacks at damage 1, 10 attacks to be precise, against more horde type units. Next is a pretty interesting addition. It's a Ragnar Blackmane, who is leading a 6-man squad of Blade Guard Veterans. I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that he can lead here, so I'm assuming that was the idea, and he's probably going into that Impulsor. Why it's an unusual thing is because Ragnar gives his unit advance and charge, so having him in Stormlance is somewhat of a double dip or overlap of the rules, so he's much more interesting in Gladius, for example, because in Gladius you only sometimes have the advance and charge, where in Stormlance you always have it. But in any case, Ragnar plus 6 Blade Guard Veterans is a powerful combination. The only thing that I would feel is lacking here is ability to give them some sort of buff on the charge, because the Shock Assault is only available for the mounted units, which is the Stormlance stratagem for Lance, and also being able to reroll the charge roll. So this is more likely something that is meant to be a threat to infantry units, elite units, not the like heavier stuff. I personally would love to run this in Gladius just because of the utility that you can get, but this is also a pretty good option. Obviously, Lieutenant with a combi weapon, we already talked about this guy at length. He's an amazing utility piece, amazing for early game scouting, early game control of objectives, especially in the center where your opponent wants to go, and you can play the game of you come closer to the central objective, I reactive move away from it behind the ruins, sometimes even that's possible, and then come out again once your units that came to the central objective have been destroyed by mine. Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf plus the Wolf Lord plus the Thunderwolf Cavalry is a pretty expensive but also efficient combo, where the Wolf Lord obviously gives the captain's ability to use a stratagem for free, which the probably most useful one is the Wind Swift Evasion for a reactive moving away from the danger 6 inches, which is an amazing stratagem, one of the most powerful ones in the Space Marine Codex, and definitely the most powerful one in the Stormlance, in my opinion. There are also other stratagems that you would also love to use, and Captain really helps with that. Plus, the Wolfguard Battle Leader obviously gives the lethal hits to the unit, and also a once per game reactive move. You could say when the Thunderwolf Cavalry unit is being shot, they can reactive move, I think, d6 inches away or in whichever direction you want. So you have a lot of mobility, extra mobility, out of sequence mobility with this unit. And of course, the Wolf Lord also gives +1 to advances and charges. So if you want to put one of these units in reserves, you can do that, and you would get an 8-inch charge out of reserves instead of a 9-inch charge. One thing that I'm not really happy about with this list, I must say, is the lack of enhancements, because enhancements in the Stormlance are pretty powerful. Especially what I would love to see here is the Fury of the Storm, which is an amazing enhancement that gives you +1 to the strength and armor penetration characteristics of the melee weapons the bearer is carrying, and on the charge it becomes +2 to the strength and AP. So if your Wolf Lord has the fist, it will be a strength 10 fist with AP 4 on the charge. Pretty amazing, and it does cost you a pretty penny, but I think it is worth it, and I think there are some options here what to cut in from this list to make this fit. And obviously one thing I really would love to see is the Hunter's Instincts, because it would allow one of these 2 blobs of Thunderwolf Cavalry to potentially go into reserves and arrive 1 turn earlier, being able to also charge from rapid ingress, because the wording of this enhancement is that you treat the current battle round as being 1 higher than it actually is, so it means that you can actually use the rapid ingress, if I understand the rules correctly. In any case, you at least can deep strike turn 1, which with your +1 to the charge roll is definitely useful. So this is the one thing that I would probably want to see changed in this list, or perhaps the author already has this in mind for his next version. So in any case, a great list, great result. So kudos to Dan, and we go on to the next one. As always, I want to remind you about my Patreon 40K coaching service. If you're looking for help building your competitive rosters, preparing you for tournaments, or have any questions about your collection in general, check out the links for my Patreon in the description. Thank you. Second is my favorite Deathwatch. It's a Blackspear Taskforce by Lazy Ogola. I'm very sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. I'm doing my best. So it's a first place win of 27 player 5-round grand tournament in England on March 15th. I'm personally very happy to see Deathwatch winning games, because they have been resurrected by the GW after they became not an army, and it's so good to see players trying to make them work and obviously making them work. I have a pretty traditional layout. A lot is similar to what we've seen in the LVO winning list. We have the core of 10 Deathwatch Terminators with 2 Thunderhammer Storm Shields and 3 Cyclone plus Power Fists. I personally like this combination more than the combo with no Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, because I understand the idea of having extra Storm Bolter shots, but I'm not sure if they outweigh the extra wounds that you get with the Storm Shield, and also the versatility of the Thunderhammer, I could say. Don't get me carried away with the list. Let's run through it quickly before I start analyzing. So we have Captain Gravis Armor, who's the Warlord, and he's carrying the Tome of the Acticlades enhancement. We have a Judice here, a traditional one in the Deathwatch list, with the Thief of Secrets enhancement, the one that gives you incredible power on your melee weapon, +1 strength, +1 AP, and +1 damage, if I remember correctly. Lieutenant with the combi weapon again, 5-man Deathwatch Veteran Squad, 2x5 JPI Squad, squads, 2x5 Deathwatch Terminator squads, 5 Incursors, 2 10-man Indomitor kill teams, which is where the fat and muscles of the list lie, 5 Infiltrators, 5 Stern Guard Veterans, a Ballistas Dreadnought, an Impulsor, and an Inquisitor. Seems that the list is trying to confuse everyone about the purpose of each unit, but don't worry, we'll get to the core of it. Captain Gravis Armor is obviously leading one of the Indomitor kill teams and is going to give them the ability to use a stratagem for free. That ability is very useful because we have an incredible stratagem for teleportation in Deathwatch, the one that we want to be using very, very often. And we can also use it for free thanks to the captain, so that makes it doubly useful, if there is such a word. They also have the Tome of the Ectoclade, so you can activate the Oath of Moment a second time once per battle, which can be useful. I'm not sure I would pay 30 points for it every time, but perhaps they did not have anywhere to put those 30 points elsewhere, so it's still a pretty good enhancement. The Judiciary is most likely leading a 5-man unit of Stern Guard Veterans who are going to give him the full rerolls to wound against the Oath of Moment target, and that is a very powerful combination. As that guy is an absolute monster in combat, he, especially if you manage to kill any model with his enhancement Thief of Secrets, he gets +2 to the strength, damage, and AP characteristic of his sword, and he's pretty good in combat already, so it becomes just an absolute blender. With full rerolls to wound he gets from Stern Guard, it's just a nightmare. And the Impulsor makes sure that you can actually get to where you're going with this unit, and they have some protection on top of it. 5 Deathwatch Veterans, probably just a utility piece to go about and charge and shoot stuff. They are reasonably cheap for what they do. They have full rerolls to hit against essentially Xenos targets, so they have some of that flexibility where they don't really need Oath of Moment to perform reasonably well, and they can do both shooting and melee to some extent. So obviously 2x5 JPI squads, they are there to do actions and to be skirmishing pieces. Nothing really changes. They're still an amazing piece for this list as well as for any other Space Marine one. The only problem is that the stratagems in the Blackspear Taskforce are mostly focused around the kill teams, so you're not really going to get a lot out of the stratagems for the JPI. However, they're pretty good even without stratagem support, so I think they are more than worth it for this list. So you have a lot of mobility in teleportation here, but you don't have a lot of mobility just on the ground, and that's probably why we have them in the roster. We already discussed the Terminators. They are essentially the anchor of the unit to give you some early game shooting potential with those 6 Cyclone missile launchers, which is essentially 12 shots. Unfortunately, we don't have this Stormspeeder Thunderstrike, so we cannot get +1 to wound against vehicles and monsters, which is probably why the LVO list had that. So in this case, we don't have that ability, but we will still be pretty efficient against all other targets apart from those that are higher toughness than 8. Incursors, they are again here for utility, scoring, and also being able to support the shooty kill teams with +1 to hit. For 80 points, getting +1 to hit on such a big volume of fire is a very efficient thing, and if the player, your opponent, goes after the Incursors, well, they're not going after the kill team, and the Incursors are still going to be efficient even if it's just one guy left, because all they need to do is just hit with one shot of their bolter. And now the 2x10 Indomitor kill teams, so they are the chunk of the list. We have 2 Melta rifles, essentially 3 Eradicators, so 2 Melta rifles, 1 multi-Melta, 3 Flamer Aggressors, and 2 normal heavy intercessors with heavy bolters, as well as just 2 normal heavy intercessors with the upgraded Deathwatch heavy bolt rifles. This unit can put out a lot of firepower, especially considering its ability to get +2 to strength. It's targeting the unit that it's charged, or it's targeting the closest eligible unit in shooting. Now you see why it's so important for this list to have the teleportation ability, because if you can teleport around, it means that you can actually manipulate which unit becomes the closest for the kill team, meaning that you get +2 to strength against it. You have 5 Infiltrators, probably to do home objective duty, or potentially in matchups where you are expecting a lot of deep striking to come to you, you can have them as a sort of bubble around your main core units to protect them from charges. The Ballista's Dreadnought, just a cheap shooting piece, not gonna kill much, but it can do some damage to a tank, giving you information on how many shots you need to put into it from your main shooting units, which are the Indomitor kill teams. And also it's 140 points now. It was 130 back when this tournament happened. Whenever your opponent is trying to kill the Ballistas, they are not trying to kill the Indomitor kill teams, and the Ballistas is just so cheap, especially it was so cheap, that you're really always gonna win in that transaction, almost always. And we have the Inquisitor, who's gonna be leading most likely the 5 Deathwatch veterans because they're Imperium battle line. They would get a 6+ invulnerable save for having the Inquisitor in the unit, and also whenever they're targeted by a stratagem on the 3+, you would get a CP back. Great list, obviously it worked pretty well for the player, but I would love to see some rhinos here for the on-the-board mobility, because mobility, in my opinion, just can be divided into 2 categories: the teleportation mobility and mobility that cannot be essentially screened out or is very hard to screen out, so the mobility on the ground. And whenever you have both, your list is extremely mobile. Whenever you have only one, there could be some problems. So in this case, I see some on-the-board mobility with the JPI, but I would love to see the rhinos with the Deathwatch veterans, which would give you even more insurance against players who are very, very good at making sure that there is nowhere on the board where your unit can land. And let's be honest, a 10-man unit of 40 mil bases of the Indomitor kill team is pretty big. So it's not easy to find a spot for these guys. Also pretty surprised that we don't see any Watchmasters here, because I think that the Watchmaster is pretty amazing with the abilities that he has now and the price point of 105 points. So I personally would love to see the Watchmaster plus the 10 Deathwatch veterans here. Plus, I'm very surprised that we don't see any Talent Strike kill teams here, despite them being so efficient and also extremely deadly, even in combat. But I get why the author wanted to opt for the Indomitor, the kill team, because it's much more durable. And despite the Talent Strike being faster, considering that your kill teams will mostly be deep striking, you are not going to often use that speed. So I cannot say this is something I consider to be a mistake, just something I'm surprised about. So overall, great job to Alaise. Again, sorry for butchering the name if I'm pronounced it incorrectly, which I probably am. Great result and a great list, and we move on to number 1. And in the first place, as you probably have guessed, we have the Ultramarines Gladius list by a player named Jan. I'm not gonna even try to pronounce the last name, I'm sorry. Who took the first place at a 51-player tournament, a 5-round grand tournament actually, in Singapore on March 15th. What we have here is essentially a hull-heavy Guilliman list. Usually these are Iron Storm lists, so I'm surprised to see this one being Gladius, though I personally always gravitate towards Gladius, as you know, because of its tactical flexibility, and I think it gives us enough bonuses that we don't really need anything else. You obviously get all those rerolls in the Iron Storm, which moves your maximum damage potential up, but I don't think Space Marines have a problem with killing one thing really dead. I think Space Marines have a problem with making sure that they get into a position where they can safely destroy the target and move away if necessary, or move up very quickly if necessary. Good choice on the detachment, I think, by the author here. And let's run quickly through the units. First, we have Captain Sicarius, 85 points. He is probably going to be leading the company heroes, I assume, and it's a very interesting combination. We don't often see Sicarius, though I think that he's actually one of the better characters the Ultramarines have, despite all of their characters being pretty amazing, because he gives the Scout 6 ability to his unit, and when you pair that with a unit that can do some melee, which the company heroes, they kinda can, because Sicarius has some melee and the company champion has some melee, so it's an okay combination for this unit. I would probably personally choose the Blade Guard, but they would be significantly more expensive, so you'd have to cut something else. In any case, that 6-inch scout move allows them to get up the board quicker and potentially use their advanced and charge ability earlier in the game. Also, you get a reactive move for this unit for free with Sicaria, so they can be positioned somewhere where they are in relative danger, but if your opponent moves up to charge them, they can just reactive move away and then counter charge. So a very interesting tactical choice. Abute Gilman, I don't think we need to explain that. He's an auto take in all Space Marine lists that can field him. Gives incredible buffs. A free stratagem every turn is essentially like having a maximum of 10 extra stratagems per game, 10 extra CP per game, and that's just incredible. The second Oath of Moment pick is also just staggeringly powerful because you are able to first designate a target that you're absolutely positive that you're going to destroy. You destroy the target, and then another one becomes reroll hits and +1 to wound. This is going to work nicely with the amazing vehicle base that we have here. Before we go to the vehicles, 5 intercessors to sit in the home objective. The company heroes led by the Sicarius, as we discussed, and 3 outriders. An unusual choice for a scoring unit, but they are also pretty good. For 80 points, you get quite a lot of wounds, a high toughness, a very good speed in a straight line, not being able to pass through ruins though, but still quite fast. And also you get the bonus that they receive for charging. So if you are attacking something that has 2 wounds, they can potentially destroy several marine equivalent models. Now to the huge parade of vehicles. A Ballistas Dreadnought, and again this is a list from the 15th of March, so the cost is 10 points cheaper than would be now. Land Raider Redeemer, which I'm really surprised to see here because I'm really not sure what is gonna go inside. I mean, the Redeemer is really good even if you don't have anyone in it, because you get amazing flamers and amazing durability. But to be honest, I would love to see something that can go inside the Redeemer, and I cannot see the company heroes being that. I mean, probably it's them, but then they are not using their Scout 6 ability, which counteracts the whole idea. So I'm not sure. I'm probably just missing something here. So if you understand what's the purpose of the Redeemer specifically in this list, let me know in the comment section below. In any case, the unit itself is efficient just by itself, so it's not really that big of a problem. Next, we have a Predator Annihilator, so the one with less cannons, and 2 Predator Destructors. You know my opinion about the Predators. I'm not really a big fan of them, but en masse, when you have Gilman, they can do a lot of work, especially if you had the Hammer Strike, the one that ignores cover. So your AP1 on the Destructors at least becomes pseudo AP2. As it stands now in this list, we cannot really ignore cover unless we use just the one stratagem for one unit. So I don't think this is the case. Potentially the player could use that because the Gilman gives them ability to use it for free, but I don't think this is wise. And 2 Vindicators, a classic choice, always amazing, incredible amount of firepower that they can provide you with. So this list, even though it's a very weird combination of vehicles, I'm pretty sure that if the player can triangulate most of these tanks onto a single target, almost anything is gonna be, well, at least very, very hurt. And lastly, the Impulsor with a shield dome. But yeah, that's where the company heroes are gonna go, so that they can actually use their Scout 6 move. So they move up 6, and then the Impulsor carries them even further, and then potentially advances, and then they can disembark afterwards. So it's a very, very far moving unit that can be staged very, very deep in the midboard, somewhere where your opponent doesn't want them to be. Overall, I really like this list. I feel the choices of the vehicles specifically could be potentially optimized slightly, because again, I don't think the Predators are like top of their potential performance. I would probably just want to see the 3rd Vindicator here and potentially more Ballistas Dreadnoughts, especially back then at the price point of 130 points. I think it was more efficient. I definitely would cut out the Land Raider Redeemer, to be honest, because if you want just something very solid that can go out and present a danger, I think Space Marines have other options for that, and just not having anything inside the Redeemer is just really troubling me. I think you could at least add something to the list instead of maybe one of the vehicles that could utilize the charge out of the Land Raider when it moves, just to make sure that you're utilizing all of your options in the list. Other than that, I think this is a very solid list and a great performance, winning first place at a 51 player event. It's amazing. So great job to Jan for winning the event and presenting us with such a great roster. It's a pretty new format for the channel. Let me know what you think if you enjoy these breakdowns of tournament winning lists. I think it's pretty cool. It gives us a perspective into the sort of open wilds of the meta. So I'm planning to continue this. If you guys enjoyed it, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.